Nearly all 10 teams in the NA LCS have finalized their roster, and there is only one North American-born mid laner in the entire league. Apparently, Dignitas is paying Huni 1/3 of their money for players, and again, we're trying to solve this North American League problem by importing more players. You've all heard the story before. Year in and year out, NA tries and fails at Worlds. And I'll be honest, I am tired of watching them try to fix this problem by importing more players to the region, while the rest of the world dominates international tournaments with homegrown talent. Let's get into this again. Okay, so last week, reminiscent to like every League of Legends offseason as of late, the conversation of homegrown talent in North America was super popular on League of Legends Twitter. The conversation was kicked off when Pobelter and Demonte, a top 3 NA mid laner and one of the region's most prominent up-and-coming mid lane talents, were left off NA rosters entirely. Now, it's obviously not a secret that North America has struggled on the international stage. And ever since Bjergsen's breakout performance in 2014 with TSM, many people have looked internationally to bring players in and change the landscape of North American League of Legends so they can compete internationally.
We have a new addition to the team this year. I'm not sure if you heard. He's joining us from SK Telecom T1, where he won a couple of rings over there, I think.
Two-time world champion.
Two-time world champion. Two-time.
The two-time. Jackson, to be honest with you.
AKA
Oh, you actually know his name.
And despite NA's slow climb to becoming somewhat relevant on the international stage, highlighted by obviously Liquid finishing in the finals of MSI this year, they have struggled to put up any results on the biggest stage, the World Championship.
There's nothing Team Liquid can do, and Invictus Gaming will be eliminating the third and final LCS contender from Worlds. Invictus Gaming advance to the quarterfinals.
Even after franchising, the development of the NA Academy system, and names like Huni, Bang, and Core JJ coming to the league, nothing seems to be working. So as we discussed a few weeks back when NA got yeeted out of yet another world championship, it's probably best if these owners of NA teams go back to the drawing board. Maybe develop some talent at home, you know, like the rest of the world's been doing for years and kicking their asses, which is, well, exactly the fucking opposite of what's been happening this offseason. And some of the biggest headlines this offseason so far are centering around how much NA is willing to pay to import that talent.
Show me the money!
In fact, like I said, so far, there's only one North American-born mid laner in the entire league. So Double If weighed in on this subject on stream last week after Pobelter's massive twit-longer about not having a team.
Very, very true. I will say Eugene as a teammate was absolutely incredible. So fucking good, man. I actually really like playing with Eugene. I thought he was really good. It's actually crazy that people think he's fucking bad or not even worth like an LCS spot. I think he's easily a top 3, top 4 mid laner in LCS. Like, you could say Jensen and Bjergsen are better than him individually, but I still think he has a lot of potential, and when I played with him, we made a great combo, me and Pobe. He's so good.
With the exception of literally Bjergsen, Pobelter is the winningest mid laner in the history of the NA LCS. And this guy can't find a team at all. He was such a big game performer when Liquid was rising to the top of the LCS. And like Double If said, he's just a great guy to have on your team. He makes everyone around him better.
Team, flying on Azazel, could be enough to start the fight out. They're gonna look forward. Ult comes across from the Irelia, and here's the big side. The first one's down, onto the back line. A huge knockup, and Svenskar, it's gone. 3 kills already. This is gonna be the ace. There is no way out for Cloud9, and stopwatch buys 3 seconds. Licorice flashes, still being chased. He will certainly drop, and the ace guarantees the base is in shambles.
And the fact that he currently doesn't even have a spot in NA really shows the culture of looking elsewhere for talent that exists in the region. Now, Demonte obviously doesn't have the pedigree that Pobelter does, but this is a young North American mid laner who improved a lot last split with Clutch. He recently spoke about the decline in meaningfulness of the NA Academy system on Hotline League.
Really excited to do Academy, and then it seemed like really good. Everyone was it was a pretty competitive split. And then just like over time, it seems like the orgs have just stopped caring as much, and you see more teams that like have maybe no coach or a budget coach or like someone who doesn't know anything, or like you have 5 players who probably don't know, like you don't even know if some of those players should be there. And it seems like over time, it's like orgs just feel like they need to give minimum salary to these players.
And at Worlds this year, he spoke to us about just how hard it is to break into that academy system in the first place.
Well, I think definitely since like 2015, 2016, they've added a lot to the amateur scene. Like scouting grounds is a pretty big deal. But I do think like NA is lacking a lot compared to something like EU because they have so many national leagues, so much like different stuff like that. And then the NA, the amateur league is like collegiate, but like collegiate and what people think of collegiate is kind of bad. Like kind of those players are not ever going to be good enough to go pro for the most part. Obviously, I think there's going to be some outliers like sometime in the future. But for sure, I think there needs to be something like right below scouting grounds that is like a consistent year-round thing.
What's more, and maybe most troubling to me, is that in some cases, these players being brought into NA aren't even objective upgrades.
This team is pathetic.
Huni is obviously an incredible talent that you can point to, but players like Ica and Ryoma are completely unknown entities. Sometimes it feels like orgs are just importing players for the sake of it. There's this constant narrative being spun around these signings every time. Like somehow imported players will bring something unique to North American teams. That somehow a different play style or a different ideological approach to the game is somehow going to be the magic recipe for success. But I have to say, I am just not sold anymore. Look, you can only have 2 imports on your roster. It's not like you're going to be able to recreate SKT in NA. There has to be a system in place to develop the 3 North American players on your team for the region to level up internationally. Parth echoed this exact same sentiment in a recent interview with Travis Gafford.
Sure, so I obviously don't know too much in detail about what other orgs do. I can just kind of give you our perspective of what we've done in the last, I guess, year and a half. So TSM holds our own scouting grounds every year. We invite players from NA, Europe, and everywhere else that we can see that we can have talent that conceivably fits into our academy or LCS system in some way. And every year our scouting grounds is different. So last year specifically, we wanted to see, last year was the first year we did it. We wanted to see what talent is available. We invited a lot of players from both EU and NA.
Historically, there's actually not really any evidence to show that mixed rosters are better than domestic ones. Sure, a team like Cloud9 have had imported talent on their roster during their success the last few years, but of the top teams, they're the one most reliant on their North American core. They're also maybe the team who has best utilized the academy system to develop names like Zazel and Blabber into key role players. Look at Europe, where after years of struggling internationally, Fnatic and G2 have developed themselves into top-tier international competitors based around fully European talent. That's the kind of future that could actually exist for NA. So another year and more of NA trying to fix all its problems with imports. Let me bring you to a headline from last week that is maybe the biggest example of this. Early on in the free agent frenzy, everybody was talking about Huni's deal. And honestly, it was met with a lot of negative attention. According to an InVen Global report, Dignitas are spending 1/3 of the money they have allotted to players on just Huni. That number is a reported $2.3 million over 2 years, as reported by ESPN. The league community seems to see this deal as a symbol for the import craze that has been this offseason. Because, frankly, it's going to be pretty hard for Dignitas to find 4 other good players to put on their roster when that much of their salary is going towards 1 player. They also had 2 of the most promising upcoming players in NA, Vulcan and Demonte, who have left the team to make room for this huge contract. Something they don't seem to be worried about at all on Twitter. Look, a few years ago when franchising was implemented, there was a lot made about how this was going to strengthen North America, that teams could take chances on young players because there was no fear of relegation. But here we are 2 years later, and honestly, that's just not happening. It's the same old shit. So if you're frustrated with yet another offseason like this, I get it, because I'm fucking frustrated too. So as we discussed a few weeks back when NA got yeeted out of yet another world championship, it's probably, fuck. So as we discussed a few weeks back when NA got yeeted out of this year's world championship, it's probably fuck. So, as we discussed a few weeks back when NA got yeeted out of this world, fuck. God damn it. There you go.